Hey everyone, so today we're talking about amazing bike infrastructure and the awesome ways it can change life. Oh, what the Just kidding. Today we're actually talking about disconnected bike infrastructure. Things like this fence that's right in the middle of a pathway. Inexplicably, I have no idea why it's like this. But our cities in North America especially seem to be rife with these kinds of small little disconnections. So today I'm going to look at what you could call the low-hanging fruit of bike-friendly cities. It's the little disconnections that just make our life a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. Over the years, there have been many different initiatives to try to make a more bike-friendly city. But often these projects are implemented piecemeal. Each one is a project into itself, and it lacks connections to other parts. The result is a city full of gaps. So a few weeks ago, I asked my Twitter community for ideas about these gaps, these disconnections in my city, and I was flooded with ideas. What I found is 4 different types of gaps, 4 different types of disconnections that probably exist in your city too. And if you stick around to the end, I'll show you the magic that can happen when these gaps are filled. All right, let's get started. Okay, the first type of gap in my urban bike gap analysis is what I'll call roads to nowhere. Here we have a nice multi-use pathway that keeps you off the road and out of the way of cars. But look what happens when I ride down this route. Did you catch that? That nice pathway just kind of dumps me onto this residential street, which is not great, but not the end of the world. But what if I want to go this way? Then I either have to join moving traffic or go illegally onto a sidewalk here. And here's the kicker, come with me over this way. So 2 blocks from that last spot, it's literally 2 blocks, is this pathway, which is one of the busiest in the city and has connections all through the city. So it's really a gap between that little pathway over here and this one. For me, it's not a big deal because I'm confident riding on roads and getting here. But if you're not, that little 2-block gap could mean the difference between riding and not riding. So that's what I mean, roads to nowhere, piecemeal infrastructure. It just makes things just that much harder if you want to ride your bike places safely. So for gap type number 2, I'm going to call it was too hard, so we gave up. So here we have a nice downtown separated bike lane, the best kind. There's a physical barrier between moving cars and bikes, so it's safe. Love it. It's heading towards the river pathway, which connects to the suburbs and all kinds of things. But down here near the end of this intersection, and I'm not going down there because it's too loud from construction, but the bike lane just ends. And there's a 4 or 5 block gap between this bike lane and the pathway. And so after riding this route a couple of blocks toward the pathway, I can tell you why there's no bike route. And it's those things over there, if you can see them, parked cars. City planners have decided that this road is not wide enough for a moving car lane, parked cars, and a bike lane. And in the fight between those things, usually the people who are entitled to store their private property in public space win. Parked cars usually win. Sadly, in this case, they did. I don't even blame the city councilor in this area. He's pretty bike friendly, but these are political fights, and sometimes the political capital just can't be spent in this sort of battle. The result is that for years we've been promised that this will be fixed, and it hasn't been. So now we have a great cycle track that way, a great pathway over there, and this 4 or 5 block gap that feels super dangerous to me. I hate riding it. I avoid it at all costs. So that's what I mean. Getting this gap fixed, it's just too hard. So no one did anything about it. Well, that was interesting. I just had one of these homeowners come out and ask me what I was doing. And I thought he was going to get mad at me because he wanted his parking space along the street, but no, he's in favor of a bike lane too. He thinks it will reduce the traffic, which is absolutely correct. So maybe I shouldn't be blaming all the homeowners who want to park their cars here, but it also makes me wonder, why hasn't this happened yet? I don't know. Okay, the third type of gap I'm going to call the hey, we did our best, but come on cyclists, get real. And these are the types of gaps that are built in because of, I'll call a failure of imagination or our failure to break out of a paradigm. And so here's the example I've got. So in my city, we have this freight rail line that bisects our downtown, even though we don't have passenger rail service in that way. But that's another story. So city planners have dug these underpasses under the rail line to get cars through here. You know, this is the newest one. It's less than a decade old. And you can tell what happened here is that this was planned, and then the city said to some planner, hey, make sure cyclists have a way around this as well. And so you can tell that they tried. So they've beautified it. There's this nice mural here. There's a bike lane along here. But overall, it's a bit weird. You have to go from a separated bike lane onto the sidewalk, counterintuitively, and then back onto a road for a couple of blocks before you can rejoin the separated bike lane network. So it's kind of a disconnected mess. And I actually know one of the planners who worked on this. Smart, well-meaning, really great, but almost given an impossible task here to squeeze cyclists into this place. And this is why I think this is an example of a failure of imagination. Like, it was an impossible task because we just couldn't break out of this sort of car-centric paradigm we're in here. This thing was imagined to get cars through, and cyclists were an afterthought. So that's what I mean. I think there are lots of gaps created in our cities because we just can't imagine a world where cars aren't the primary focus. I don't blame anyone specifically for this, but I do blame sort of this societal problem that focuses only on cars in our transportation systems. Sometimes you see a gap in bike infrastructure that's so weird and bizarre and inexplicable that you just have to say, what the f***? These are the WTF gaps. So here's one kind of minor example of a WTF gap. I remember when this was put in a few years ago, I thought, great, we're going to have a safe bike route to take me up the street to all the great restaurants and shops along this road. But when it was put in, it kind of came a few blocks and then ends right here. That's it. There's no way to get up the road. And if you're coming down the road, down the hill, to get on this one, you'd have to cross lanes of traffic in the opposite direction. WTF? I thought maybe it was temporary and they would fix it after some time, but nope, this is it, it's done. Now that I think about it and I've asked around, it seems like what they've done is built it so that you can go that way to the right safely, but I don't want to go that way. I want to go up to where all the cool things are. This is just one of those WTF moments where you're like, what is going on here? Why is this so hard? Why do we make this so hard to get around the city on a bike? And I think there are some cities really rampant in these WTF gaps. And speaking of WTF gaps, this is the part of the video I was most excited to talk about because this is the site of a former WTF moment, or maybe a former road to nowhere. Either way, a gap, a former gap. So what happened here was about 7 or 8 years ago, this nice separated bike lane was created that connects to the downtown network. You can go in both directions. It was a real push by the city, but it ended right here. The bike lane abandoned me. I was going the wrong way on a one-way. I had to get off the street as quickly as possible. But just in the last few weeks, look what's happened. It's been completed. So the city, when they repaved the street, went back and completed the bike lane. It actually goes all the way down several more blocks and connects, this is the best part, it connects to a transit route, a light rail transit stop. So you actually can take the train, get on the bike lane, and safely make it all the way downtown without ever having to interact with traffic. So I wanted to talk about this because the intention of this video is not just to dump on City Hall or criticize the city. It's to point out how great it can be when these little gaps are filled. Our cities may be filled with gaps, but they also can be, in some cases, pretty quick and easy. This one took 7 years. I don't know why it took so long, but it was just like 4 or 5 more blocks of continuing a bike lane and making a nice connection to the end. It makes a huge difference. Now people can ride safely all the way to where they want to go. That is the magic of filling those gaps. And that's why I said at the beginning, this was the low-hanging fruit of bike-friendly cities. I feel like in cities where there is this piecemeal infrastructure, just making some connections can make a huge difference. Anyway, hope that helps. If you've got examples in your city, please share them. Sometimes it's fun to wallow in each other's grief, but also it's good for all of us to learn from other cities. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.